Welcome to English Express. No glamour, no clamor, just simple explanation. Today we shall be discussing Macbeth Act 1, Scene 7. This scene is very important because it highlights Macbeth's moral dilemma to commit the deed of murdering Duncan or not. And therefore, he goes on to say, if it were done when it is done, then it were done quickly. Which means, if this act has to be done, this act of assassination, then to think about the consequences and achievement of its success with Duncan's death would be ultimately the aim, because if this deed has to be carried out, it has to be carried out quickly before he is overcome by other thoughts. This dilemma that Macbeth suffers from shows that Macbeth is a morally upright, virtuous man originally, unless and until influenced by Lady Macbeth. This soliloquy shows that Macbeth is in his castle while the other hot boys, referring to the people who are serving the king, are getting ready and preparing for the dinner. And Macbeth's thoughts are perturbed in the middle of all of this preparation, whether to go on or whether not to carry on the deed of murder. Macbeth says that he feels that he is on the shoal of time, which implies he feels that he imagines himself standing in the shallow water and he has to take the risk, the chance of any life after death. He goes on to talk about the fact that justice is impartial and it forces people to drink from the chalice they had given to others. So, therefore, he says that we are always punished because we teach other people the crimes that we have once committed or that were once committed against us. Entire situation becomes troublesome for Macbeth when he talks about his double trust. The first thing that he says, that Duncan has double faith on Macbeth for two major reasons. Firstly, because Duncan is his closest relative and he is the monarch who has come to his subject. The second reason being the fact that Macbeth has to act as the humble host while Duncan is his honored guest. He says that if this deed is carried out, then in that regard, Duncan, who is originally a very virtuous man, will die, no doubt, but his virtues will cry out loudly. It would seem as if, pity, which is a feeling of, sorrow for someone, will also seem to be moving out like a naked newborn baby and overriding and creating a blast in the situation, just like a cherubim, just like angels that are air driven, keep on making announcements or heralding or proclaiming the horrid news of Duncan's death. In other words, Duncan's good virtues will itself speak for the heinous deed of crime done against him if Duncan is murdered. But Macbeth's dilemma is so deep. He says if he has to carry on this deed, the only sole reason for doing so would be his vaulting ambition, which doesn't allow him to be at rest. Ultimately, Macbeth feels that he is not going to carry on with the deed. This is when Lady Macbeth interrupts and says, she asks him why has he left the chamber, and Macbeth says that was he even asked for? At that moment, Macbeth makes a very clear notion and gives Lady Macbeth the idea, we will proceed no further in this business. We will not carry on this deed. He hath honoured me of late. So Macbeth's virtuous side is again stirred up and he feels that Duncan has honoured him, and he bears a good name, and he wouldn't want his name to be spoilt. To this, Lady Macbeth very rigidly remarks, that was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself, hath it slept since? In other words, were you so steeped in your virtues, and now you have woken up from your sleep and you have realized that you cannot carry on the deed? Lady Macbeth goes on to say she is basically trying to stir up Macbeth's ego and make him realize that he should not be a coward and act when the opportunity and the time is ripe. Make it suitable to suit his needs, and become and seize the crown which would make him the King of Scotland. She goes on to say that had she been a mother milking and breastfeeding a newborn child, looking at the tenderness of the child whom she would want to love, and while seizing that opportunity and while the child would be smiling at her face, she would have plucked the child away and not allowed the child to enjoy the moment of love and affection which he would have got from his mother, and she would have dashed his brains out. In other words, killed the suckling child who was so innocently smiling and trusting its mother. So if Lady Macbeth can commit a heinous deed with such ambition, when ambition is much more important than just serving the innocent, then Macbeth should also be brave enough to carry on the deed and not think about the virtues and the honors bestowed on him by Duncan, who has come there with full trust in him. Macbeth is still terrified, and he questions what happens if we should fail. And Lady Macbeth again dismisses his dilemma and states, we cannot fail. We fail? And she goes on to say that you have to tighten the strings of your lute to tune a particular instrument. So similarly, you have to tighten your faith and have that firm faith in yourself. Keep your courage right and all will fall into place, and we will not fail in our deed. And she goes on to proceeds to tell about the plan further, that when Duncan is asleep, she will take this opportunity and make the two chamberlains, that's the guards who are outside Duncan's door guarding him, drink so much wine that, being steeped in wine, they will be absolutely out of their senses. Taking that opportunity, they will murder Duncan, and they can put the blame on these two guards who, being spongy officers, that means they are steeped in by and intoxicated so much that they have lost their senses because of the excessive drinking of alcohol, that they can bear the guilt of the murder that is committed by Macbeth and his wife. Then that stirs up Macbeth, and he says that you are capable of bringing forth men children only, because of her undaunted spirit. In other words, she has a very fearless spirit. And he says that after they have committed the deed, they will smear the blood of Duncan on these guards so that it seems that they have committed the deed. Lady Macbeth says that they will also render a fine performance of their grief for Duncan's death, that people will not doubt their intentions. Macbeth is completely stirred and moved by what Lady Macbeth has said. He says, I am settled and bent up, each corporal agent to this terrible feat. So he is his physical and mental faculty is now ready to commit this deed. And he keeps on highlighting the theme of Shakespeare's Macbeth, which is appearance and reality. False face must hide what false heart doth know. He is disloyal to his king, but the situation demands him to put up a fine show. His face will hide the emotions, what is going on within his heart.